To me, life is a summary of your experiences. The biggest depression that you might be experiencing, or the biggest elation that you might be experiencing, there's a certain impermanence to that.
There is Anupam Arun. Anupam with the illustrious 3 decades of career across finance, technology and SaaS products. He has been on the forefront of what it means to be a true leader. Anupam is the country head and the senior vice president with CVent.
Nature teaches you that. When I became the first CEO for Ventura, I had not ever bargained for the kind of responsibility it brought with it. I was the first employee sitting cross-legged in the server room, and the aim was to scale the company to 3,000 people. I thought I was not ready for it. You know, that typical imposter syndrome. I think one belief I have is that your success in today's times depends on how fast you can learn and unlearn. So I keep that as an attitude, that if something worked for me in the past, it may not work in the current. Being human is more important than being a leader. You know, chances that you are a great leader without being a great human,
Very, very bleak.
a lot of what you see on the outside of a leader has to be about what's going on inside. Organizations grow when individuals grow. There has to be a marriage of personal objectives with the organizational objective. The team, as I said, is always more smart than the leader. Beyond a time, your consumption at the physical materialistic plane is going to run out. When you have spent X number of years walking the face of earth, there are only few things that delight you, that awaken the child in you. And one of them is the glorious uncertainty of what tomorrow will bring.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of the show, The X-Monks Drive. I'm your host Gaurav and Anupam, and our today's conversation, we are going to bring to you Anupam Arun. Anupam with the illustrious 3 decades of career across finance, technology and SaaS products. He has been on the forefront of what it means to be a true leader. Anupam is the country head and the senior vice president with CVent. In our today's conversation, we are going to dig deeper into 3 extremely important topics. 1. What does it mean to be a leader in the highly complex world that we are a part of? What does it mean to be a soulful, purposeful leader? And how to stay relevant while you are sticking to your purpose? And the third important thread is, what are the pleasures and the difficulties of being a parent? So let's take a dive and hear from Anupam. Thank you, Anupam. It's such a pleasure to have you on our show, The X-Monks Drive. And it has been a joy knowing you. It has been an absolute delight enjoying conversations with you. So let's get started.
Sure, Gaurav. Thank you for having me, and always a pleasure speaking to you.
Thank you. Anupam, here is what I believe. That who we become has got something to do with our childhood. And at the same time, if I look at my childhood, there are certain traits, there are certain shades that I would not be able to recognize. Now, the other day I was talking to you that every sage has a past, every sinner has a future. What about your childhood that you're not been able to recognize today for yourself? Forget about others.
No, absolutely. I think I grew up in a very strict environment. Both my parents professors, so there were always books. There was a very serious, studious environment at home. You couldn't play music loudly.
Yeah.
There were very strict hours for sitting on the desk. So obviously, as I grew up, a lot of those things changed. Even today, I love playing music loudly. But look, I was introspecting on this aspect that we are all probably happiest during our childhood. So I tried to decode, where did I spend my time as a child? What would I love doing? And 2 or 3 things came out. I loved playing cricket. I loved flying kites. I played marbles.
Yeah.
So not all of them are possible, but wherever possible, I try to incorporate that in my schedule today. And believe me, I feel as happy as I did as a child.
Yeah, there's something about the childhood
Yeah.
that's so mystical, that's so magical, isn't it?
Absolutely. And those activities, those groups, those friends, as we see in Hindi, that bindas life.
Yeah.
So I think it is very possible to bring that back. Now, the childhood might not come back, but what you did as a child, there's nothing that prevents us from dipping back into it.
Yeah. As I'm just reflecting on this, Anupam, that how most of us tend to lose that childhood traits of our own selves. And I'm just wondering, why does that happen?
I think it's a lot of conditioning, Gaurav. So, as a child, you behave straight from the heart. You may have a great friend one day and have a huge fight the next day and sulk for a week. There is no established social pattern that you're trying to adhere to.
Yeah.
But as you are growing up, that conditioning kicks in. You can say this, you cannot say this, don't behave like this when you're outside, don't ask for food if you're visiting family.
Yeah.
So that sort of changes the way that we behave. And that's why I believe that retaining the child in us keeps us true, keeps us happy, keeps us honest.
Anupam, you've got two daughters. When you look at them, I'm sure that you would not have that kind of strict environment at your house, at your home, right?
Yeah, well,
What are the similarities and the differences do you notice between you and those two beautiful angels?
well, they would be the best one to decide whether they had it strict or not, because that is relative to the times
Yeah.
we have been brought up in, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, honestly, as they were growing up, one of the similarities was the basic sense of trust. So my parents would always say to me that you can do whatever you like as long as you've told us where you are going, as long as you've told us when you'll be back. We just want your welfare. We don't want to police you. And I think my daughters hopefully experienced that there was complete trust. And the message as a father that I always wanted to give to them, and hopefully it resonated with them, was that I have your back. You can go out there, you can explore life, you can experience life within the right quote unquote value system, and I will always be there for you. And I think that was very important for me. As I grew up, I always knew that with whatever means that are available, I could always go back to my parents and they would do the best that they can for me as a child. So I think that was really important. I think the second thing is, as I said, values usually are instilled in the family. So when I look at them as wonderful young professionals, the elder one, Ananya, she's pursuing her corporate career now in Toronto after passing out from the University of Waterloo. She's an associate product manager with one of the MNCs. The younger one, Amaya, is about to start her journey in the same university on the science side, University of Waterloo again in Toronto. And when I was going to drop them, Ananya, she was 17 years old, not even an adult. And it put to test everything that you believe, because for a father, especially an Indian father, it's extremely challenging to have that belief that your daughter is going to be all the way other side of the globe, and they're going to be able to take care of themselves. But I think that independence, that ability to put your values in action, I see a lot of similarity in that. The ability to value what you have, not take anything for granted. Put in your 100% effort, right? Sometimes we call them middle class values.
Yeah.
I always laugh about this. I was visiting my elder daughter, and we were talking about going somewhere, and she said, "Dad, we'll just walk." I said, "Well, it's showing 20 minutes." She said, "Well, under 20 minutes, it's always a walk because the Uber is too expensive." And she's doing well. Yet, I was silently quite happy to hear how she was ascribing value to money. Because now it was obviously her own experience, and she was prioritizing. Now, she would happily spend for a concert experience $100, but she would be mindful to accumulate those $100.
Yeah.
So some of this, I guess, is quite similar. I think where they're different is there's a spirit of freedom in them. Maybe it's because we didn't have that quote unquote privileged childhood. We were always worried about economically making the mark. I think most of the kids, especially our daughters, they have that roof over their head. They have the basics taken care of. So they truly are out there to make a mark, and they have that sense of confidence and freedom that at least I did not have in the similar years.
Yeah. And I'm sure, Anupam, that must be like testing times when you know that your daughter is across the world, alone, 17. Now, in those testing times, what helped you to sail through?
Yeah, look, as I said, it is the shared context that you create when you are bringing up your daughters. Now, I was in the corporate world. I became a CXO relatively early in life, very fortunate. I've been in those roles for 2 decades now. So as a traveling CXO with different responsibilities, setting up new offices, traveling internationally, time was always a challenge. And I learned this in my parenting years, that the quality of what you do with your kids is extremely important, more than the quantity. So for the 4 or 5 days when they're going to school, they have their own world. They don't necessarily maybe have the time to bond with you, to do a lot of things together, right? As they grow up, they have their own life. So how do you find the common areas of building that shared context? How are you there for those critical moments in their lives? The parents teacher meeting where the grades aren't great, the time when they're going to be on the stage, the time when there's a sports event. They will watch out and look for you in the crowd. It doesn't matter if anybody else is there or not, but they do want to see you there. And being there in those critical moments 100%, not on the phone, not multitasking, but being there 100% builds that over the number of years.
Yeah.
You cannot, on the day when they're going to the university, expect to be imbibed with that confidence. I
Precisely.
think a lot of that shared context gave me that comfort, Gaurav.
Precisely.
And even today, I have a very basic rule as I went through those years of their upbringing. Both the daughters were very aware that the dad is at work 10 to 12 hours a day. He doesn't like to be disturbed when he's at work. So only if there was something really important in their views, would they call me on my phone. Even today, I have a rule, whether I'm talking on this podcast or I'm with my CEO or if I'm in a board meeting. If my daughter calls, I pick up the phone.
I will take the call.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because that is when they experience that you are there for them.
Yeah.
You cannot decide
Yeah.
and choose to be there for them when it works for you. You have to be there for them
Absolutely.
when they need you.
Absolutely. And that's how you develop that trust. What are those assumptions or beliefs that you held true for yourself, that you ended up questioning, challenging, as you continue to grow, as you continue to become a parent that you have become?
Anything which is worthwhile will be tough. So I
Yeah.
pursued National Defense Academy. I made it. I was disqualified in the medical because I was extremely overweight. But I was given 45 days. And Gaurav, believe you me, I turned my life upside down for 44 days out of the 45. And I lost 9 kgs of weight
Wow.
in that period of time.
Wow.
And that changed the way that I looked at the physical dimension of life thereafter.
Beautiful.
I believed that if I really want to,
I can.
I can.
One of my teachers, one of my mentors, he tells me that I think this is the best gift you can get. When the way you look at yourself, you alter that, it changes your life.
Yeah.
After that, would love to hear from you, because every time I've heard you being so assured of yourself. Now, was there a time when you started to doubt your existence, where you said to yourself that that's not going to happen, where you started to question your existence? How
Yeah.
did you deal with that situation?
Again, Gaurav, I think to me, life is a summary of your experiences. And the path to that assuredness that may come through today to the audience or anybody who meets me has gone through a number of twists and turns. I was raised in a very small town called Allahabad. After that, taking the first flight to migrate a process back to India or to work on a project. And I've had the fortune of working in all continents other than Africa. A lot of that, I guess, experience is your teacher. And when those questions come up, of course, you at some point in time doubt your adequacy. There's the imposter syndrome. When I first got the CXO or CEO level job, I was the first individual to be hired in the company. My total work experience was 10 years. And the aim was to scale the company to 3,000 people. And I was the first employee sitting cross-legged in the server room, because that is only where the AC was working. Everywhere there's no air conditioning. So in all those times, I think what has really helped me is the belief in execution, action, movement. Take the next step. As long as you have sincerity of purpose, as long as there's a purpose that is bigger than just your welfare. You're trying to do well for the team, you're trying to do well for the organization, you're trying to work for a larger good. Society, economy, country, with that purpose, if you take the next step, I think the critical part when you go through those moments of doubt is to just take the next step. I'm a big fan of movement. And I think in your toughest phases, if you notice, there's a tendency to pace the floor.
Yeah.
When you are an expecting father, as they show in the movies, the person is walking the floor. When you're in the boardroom, you see people, tough decisions, they're walking. There is something around movement that has always caught my eye. So a 20 minutes walk when you are stressed, whether it's in your office, whether it's outside, that movement creates karma in a certain way. And that one step then takes to the next, and then you're suddenly feeling, and that's why scientists have done a lot of research on how do these great ideas come about. That you see in the cartoons, that bulb lighting. In my experience,
That aha moment.
I think it has a lot to do with movement, action, karma. So yes, of course, people go through that. So have I, and at number of times, even when you are at the pinnacle of your career, the more higher you go, more are the odds, right, that you will not succeed. And one misstep. So if you're going to be paralyzed by that fear, and you're always going to worry about how am I going to do this, then you will never take on anything worthwhile. So the sincerity of purpose is the antidote that gives you the vision, because you're driven by the larger vision.
Yeah.
It's not about you. So you take it on, and then you follow it with the first step, with the belief that I can do this.
Yeah.
The following steps will come. That's not for us to worry about.
Anupam, there are days when I 100% believe in what you're talking about. But then there are times when I start to question and doubt and start to wonder if all the efforts that I've been putting into, are they going to give me any kind of results? At times I experience a sense of burnout, a sense of tiredness, a sense of exhaustion, a sense of hopelessness, a sense of where I get into blaming the world that he did not do that, they did not do that, they have been responsible for why things are not happening. Have you experienced these emotions?
Oh, of
or
course.
they're not a part of your dictionary?
No.
Come on. They are.
Of course, Gaurav. I think some of what you just said tells you that you are making progress. Some of that paranoia is good. It drives more effort. It drives you to get out of your bed the next day, because it is again the commitment to your purpose that will make you go, okay, if this didn't happen well today, I'm going to go at it harder the next day. But look, ours is a civilization of thousands of years. Some say, it's one of the oldest civilizations. It's important to get inspired by history, in my experience, because a lot of things repeat themselves. When it is happening to us, we believe we are the only ones who are going through
Which
it.
is not the case.
Of course not. Any tower of success that you see today is built on the bricks of that frustration, of that iterative process, of stumbling and falling. Look at nature. How does the spider make the web? There are so many inspiring things in nature around how those wonderful things, how the butterfly becomes the butterfly. Everything has that process, Gaurav. Like I said, the butterfly, the evolution. So pain is good in my dictionary. But like I said, when I go back to history, or if you look at your civilization, look at a text like, say, Bhagavad Gita, it talks about it. That look, focus on what you own.
Yeah.
You own the effort.
That's it.
Right? The outcomes will follow. And in my experience in the corporate world, for example, 3 decades, I've obviously gone through a lot of situations where in a particular moment in time, it appears like my efforts are not being recognized.
Yeah.
It appears like the output is not happening because I have an expectation of the output. When you look back, 30 years is a long time, Gaurav, on that sort of spectrum of time, over a period of time, these laws work. If you have put in the effort, the outcomes have to come. It's almost like it's bound by a rule of physics. If you throw something up, it's bound to come down.
Yeah.
My humble experience is, if you have put in the effort, the outcomes have to come. The question is, will you have the patience or will you give up?
To stay on track.
Correct. And as people say, the darkest hour is before the dawn. If you could have just held on for that one more effort, you may have. So patience becomes key. And I think people sometimes misunderstand patience.
Yeah.
So sometimes, in the corporate world, people come to you and say, hey, be patient. Or I cannot be more patient. I need my promotion. I should have got my reward by now.
Yeah.
And what I have experienced as patience is not waiting. Patience is all about what kind of an attitude do you maintain while you are waiting. Are you able to sustain your effort? Are you able to maintain that commitment?
Beautiful. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's not just passing time, right? And hoping that it's going to come to you. In the corporate world, it's extremely tough to be a leader. I always joke, in Event India, we have, say, 2,500 people here. And sometimes I talk about it that when you're walking into office, there are 5,000 eyes on you.
Yeah.
And that is tough. It's like being on stage all the time.
All the time.
So, to your point, a lot of what you see on the outside of a leader has to be about what's going on inside. Now, to your point, what are we missing? Are we as leaders putting in equal effort on developing the inside as much as we do the outside? So there's an extreme amount of preparation that goes.
Before you start to perform on the stage.
And the external persona of it.
Yeah.
Now, would you even put half the preparation on preparing your inside internally? How are you feeling? Are you aware of, hey, as I get into work right now, I am actually in a very tough personal spot. It is going to affect me. So when I get in, am I going to be aware that today is a day when I need to be all the more patient because what's going on inside me is going to affect me on the outside? How do people do such things over a long period of years, number of years? How do you develop that habit of being self-aware? Hey, as a leader, I impact lives. My words matter. So there are a lot of softer aspects of development and coaching, mentoring, awareness, all of that over a number of years, Gaurav, as you get more senior, I think you need it all the more. Because as you know, there's this pyramid of ignorance that the corporate world talks about.
Yeah.
And people often refer to that as ignorance around the subject matter. So if I'm, like in the banking example, if I'm the SVP or the country head of a bank, would you expect me to know account opening form? The answer is no. So people say, well, that's the pyramid of ignorance. In my experience, especially since I got into coaching and mentoring and have had the fortune of working with senior leaders and observing senior leaders, where that pyramid of ignorance works the most is about themselves. There is a severe risk that with number of years, you develop this persona, this belief about who you are, and you keep strengthening that to the point of ignorance. So you might be the exact opposite of what you believe you are.
Yeah.
But there isn't any awareness. And why does that happen? Because you're not spending time there. You're spending more and more time on the external factors and less time preparing yourself for the leadership, which you believe should come to you naturally because you spent the time, you've got the years, you've got the title. That, I think, is a huge missing point in today's world.
As I'm just listening to you, I'm just wondering, rather than spending time on internet, it's important to spend time on internet.
Oh, that's a good way of putting it.
Right.
And even if you're spending time on the internet, can you look at areas that help you with the internet?
Yeah. Going back to the parenting conversation that we were happening, Anupam, how has being a father shifted your leadership style?
Wow. Nobody's ever asked me
That's
that.
a googly.
Yeah, it's a real googly, yeah. Well, look, as I go back to the years when my daughters were in the 0 to 5 years age group, for example, my first CEO role or first CXO role as a country head happened when my elder daughter was 5 and the younger one was just born. So I actually did have a period of time, and that was a new role as well. So to your point, the two energies, both very new, uncharted territories. The first thing that I think you learn is patience. When I say patience again, you want certain outcomes from the child, for example. You want the child to be potty trained. You want the child to eat properly, not cry at the wrong time.
Yeah.
You want a lot from the child. You want to control those outcomes. You ever set design in your mind? And a lot of it is for the good of the child. You don't want the child to be cranky. You don't want the child to be, misbehaving, as you would say, right? Think of the corporate world as starting a new organization. I had a lot of rights and wrong in my mind.
Yeah. Based on your past.
And exactly. And what I was conditioned to be as a leader. So I similarly wanted the team to do a lot of things the way my mental blueprint was.
Yeah.
There's a particular way you recruit. There's a particular way you train. There's a particular way you run your meetings. And in both the cases, as the kids grew and as the team grew, I had to learn the art of patience. Because, both the kids, for example, are very different. So to expect that the second child would follow the first child is absolutely folly.
Yeah.
Similarly, if you hire 2 or 3 different leaders in different functions, you cannot expect them to be similar. You have to learn to value the diversity. You learn to value them as individuals and say, you know what? Yeah, Vivek may have a particular style of leadership, and that works for him or her, right? Or in a different situation, Malini may be a subject matter expert who has come up with a different value
Yeah.
system.
Yeah.
Now, I've got both of them in the organization for the right reasons. Can I focus and harness the diversity they bring in, or do I want to get them to converge and be compliant to my design? I think you have to resist that as a leader because organizations grow when individuals grow. There has
Yeah.
to be a marriage of
Yeah.
personal objectives with the organizational objective. And kids, similarly, in
Yeah.
this current world day and age, they have to have the freedom of self-expression to become who they are best suited to become. So to all the parents out there, and to your question about learning from the upbringing, leave a little bit of space for the magic that your kids can create. Leave a little bit of space for the magic that your teams can create. Believe
Yeah.
me, collectively, they're smarter than you are.
Okay. So, Anupam, you mentioned that a leader goes through a lot of resistance. Resistance comes when there is a need to prove something, when there's a set assumption, there's a set belief, there's a set identity that you've been holding on to.
I think that I is the challenge. Moving from that I to the we when you become a leader is very important. A leader, in my experience, should be absolutely fine being wrong if it helps the organization do the right thing. Right? A leader makes that transition where your personal view is just one more view in the room. Right? And that's when you harness the collective of the team. If it is that I feel it is a challenge, then I know that I'm in the chair and you will build a culture of compliance. So if you want the diversity which all of us talk about in corporate world, if you want that contribution from the team, it is the leader's responsibility to create the environment of trust. It's the leaders leading by example on how do you deal with that differing voice. What kind of platform and importance do you give to it that fixes the culture for the organization? So I think, again, goes to the internal preparation of yourself, managing of your sense of ego, managing and submitting it to the larger cause. Making sure that you don't, you define, like I said earlier, the sincerity of purpose. You know why you're doing what you're doing. And in that goal, everybody is welcome to contribute. Everybody in that movement has to be a part of it. Because when you grow as a people leader, you realize that your individual contribution does not move the needle. Your biggest individual contribution is to make sure that you are infecting your next levels with your vision. You're providing them the direction, the support as a facilitator. So there the sort of presence of your I or yourself fades a little bit in the background.
Yeah.
And the real measure of your success is how well your team and the rest of the organization resonates. So I remember this little story. I had the fortune of listening to Jack Welch as a part of my G journey as a young leader. And somebody asked him something about, G has so many thousands and thousands of people, so many different businesses, Jack. How do you sort of measure your own success when you're thinking of a new program? G was very famous at indoctrination of sorts, right? And people used to think it comes from Jack. And Jack's answer, I still remember to this date, was that for me, when I'm thinking of launching something for the entire organization, the measure that I think of is that if I was to bump into the frontliner, the person who's at the entry level, and I was to ask them the definition of whatever I'm trying to launch, the 4 E's or many things, Six Sigma,
Yeah.
how close would their answer be to my design?
Yeah.
Therefore, one of the things that Jack pushed a lot, and again, I'm a big believer in, is simplification. The simpler the message, the easier for it to resonate through the ranks,
Yeah.
the easier for people to rally behind it and execute.
Yeah.
The more complicated you make it, even if it's a expression of yourself as a leader,
Yeah.
the harder it will be for people to be able to execute on that.
Yeah. I think simplicity comes from the mastery that you experience on any subject for that matter. If you were to look at, Anupam, you've worked with the organizations like GE, you've worked with Bank of America, you've worked with Encore, you've worked with, now you are currently with Cvent. If you were to identify these three pillars that have helped you become who you have become and lead the organizations that you have led, which top three pillars would you identify for yourself?
Well, trying to compound 30 years or compress them into 3 is tough, but I'll
Yes,
try.
that's simplicity, isn't it? Come on.
Thanks, Gaurav, for holding me true to what I'm preaching. Yeah, look, the first thing is I believe in the power of execution. We
Yeah.
spoke about movement, right? And there has to be a certain urgency. With that sincerity, there is urgency. You look at some of the movements that happened in our country. You know, we were not independent because I'm a student of history for a number of years. And then came the freedom movement. And the leaders ensured that there's an urgency to it. So I think it's important because when you look at time, it's very easy to get complacent. I have enough time to execute on this. I can, correct. Yeah, I mean, there are years ahead of me. You know, personally, I've believed in the urgency of execution. If you set your heart on something, execute. Because guess what? Alexander the Great lived for only 32 years and conquered the world. Vivekanand, our great Indian philosopher, passed away at 39.
Guru Gobind Singh Ji.
Guru Gobind Singh Ji. So, for a lot of them, the measure
Yeah.
was the intensity of their purpose that drove the
I think
intensity of the
the
execution.
clarity of what they genuinely cared for and why.
Correct. And that drove the urgency of execution, and then the outcomes happened. So I think that is one. The second, and it may sound a little philosophical, Gaurav, but I'll give you real-time corporate experiences linked to it. I believe in this phrase that this too shall pass.
This too shall pass.
This too shall pass. Why is that so important? And over 30 years, you know, you go through highs and lows in your career. When I was going back to GE, I wanted to be a vice president. That was the thing I woke up with, I slept with. I was like willing to put in 60 hours of work, take on different projects. It was like the military. Give me the orders and I will execute, right? Do anything for it. Interestingly, the year that I got my vice president title, within a year of that, the organization sold the business, the India business, to venture capitalists. And the whole, hey, I will retire in GE once I'm a VP. I'm one of the youngest VPs. Everything that mattered came crashing down because there was insecurity. There was uncertainty for a period of time, a very massive, in those days, change of ownership. So I learned that some of those milestones that you're chasing, they will come and then they will pass.
They are temporary.
And there'll be a next day after that, right? Similarly, while you want the title, you want the role. When I became the first CEO for Ventura, I had not ever bargained for the kind of responsibility it brought with it. Massive change in my life. Like you are possessed. You know, giving birth to an organization is as much as those 9 months of childbirth.
Yeah.
You know, that too shall pass. I remember the day when I left Ventura because it was my baby. I was there for 7.5 years. On a lighter note, I had the pleasure of designing my own office, the corner office, right?
Yeah.
And, once I made up my mind that there was a transition, the new leader was supposed to come in. And I had set a particular date that I'll move my stuff. So typically going and packing your box, I was doing that. And it was obviously already tough. And when I moved out of my room, when my team was helping me and so on, interestingly, I saw that outside my room, the name had already been changed. I realized that even this shall pass.
Yeah.
And I think in the moment, the biggest depression that you might be experiencing or the biggest elation that you might be experiencing, there's a certain impermanence to that.
There is.
Nature teaches you that.
What is it about transition that makes it so difficult? And transition of any kind is not easy. Transitioning from one city to another, one role to another, one organization to another, one relationship to another, one season to another. Transition of any kind, it's not that easy. And that too, after 7.5 years, when you went through that transition, how was the process? And how did you deal with that?
The process was very tough. It happened very suddenly. The organization got acquired. And these acquisitions, they don't get publicized so that you get enough time to plan for them. It was like suddenly when my daughter told me the first time that, I want to pursue, very casually, she told me my graduation outside India. I was like, you're only 17. Go for post-graduation, to the graduation here. It is the same feeling of letting go, right? Now, voluntarily, I think the reason it becomes so difficult is because voluntarily, none of us plan for that. Our belief is that if I'm having a good time right now, if I enjoy doing this, this should last forever.
Yeah.
This is the way it should be. We are very focused on defining fixed
Shoulds
outcomes.
and should nots.
Correct. And those are, again, and to be a little philosophical, the exact opposite of the process of flow, right? Because the flow decides when you're in the moment. You may be destined for a lot greater things.
Yeah.
But how would they happen if you have laid anchor on your present? And that's why do you do, but leave the outcomes, like I said earlier, let there be a little bit of space for magic, right? And that can only happen when you're in the flow. So letting go, all these imageries, when you think of them, Gaurav, they are linked to the flow of water, letting it go, flowing, floating, movement. You can imagine the waves, right? Now think of that in the corporate world today. I would go to the extent of saying, in my 30 years, I went through 4 mergers and acquisitions. Some of them included layoffs. The world we live in is so dynamic. The corporate world, there are so many uncertainties. One week you're reading about recession. The other week, the stock market is at its highest. Organizational leadership is going through that flux themselves. A lot of uncertainty.
Yeah.
What do you prepare for in that environment? If I'm doing really well right now, if I'm getting a great bonus this year, what do I plan for? Naturally, my instinct would be to expect that this is going to continue.
Yeah.
Whereas the preparation that I would advise is be prepared to be in the flow and have the belief that whatever is going to come next is going to be even better. So when I go into a little bit of mentoring and I talk to CXOs who are experiencing some of that, and I tell them, look, why don't we take a pen and paper and do a basic graph, x-axis, y-axis. So what's on the axis? X-axis has the time and y-axis has your career progression. And you have done 20, 25 years right now. Plot it. And typically the graph would look like this or some variation of this. It could be like this and this. It could be like this and this, but it is typically like this. So the question at this point in time that you're so afraid, so worried about is if you had 5 years earlier just chosen to freeze it and said, this is where I want to lay anchor, you wouldn't have reached here.
Yeah.
So have the belief that whatever got you here, your skill sets, your strengths, your attitude,
Or whatever it is.
the force, that is with you. So continue to be with the flow.
So, in your role as a country head for C-Vent, Anupam, and you have been in the C-suite executive roles for almost like 2 decades now. What do you think? What gave you that edge when first time you were chosen for that role? Was it your skill set? Was it some universal power? Was it who you were, the fire, the vision, the purpose? What was that?
Well, it's difficult to answer. I can only guess, but maybe you touched on some of them. So first of all, it was destiny because I thought I was not ready for it. That typical imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
Even when I got the offer, I was like, geez, I've never done a CEO or starting an organization role. I mean, to be immodest, I was quite successful as an operating VP. I knew my stuff, but huge transition to being the first employee and to set everything up from yourself. So that kicked in. Why I got it, and I really, to be honest, that insecurity continued even after 3 months or 4 months being in the role. So when I got an opportunity to talk to the chairman the managing director who hired me, I did ask him this question because I thought now he's not going to retrench me, right?
Yeah.
It's been 3 months, I'm confirmed. So I said, you could have, I'm sure a lot of people applied for it who were existing CEOs and so on. And it was a great lesson in leadership hiring, right? Because his answer to me was, and their experience was the reason that they weren't hired. In his mind, he wanted to create a very different experience in India. He wanted a UK kind of a call center or customer service business in India, not an Indian-centered delivering to the UK business in his vision. So he wanted someone who was, in his mind, who had the attitude. So he told me, I told my HR head, I'm looking for someone with a fire in the belly. Someone who will not be afraid to fail, but who is going to be open to experiment, open to learn, open to go with the flow and do new things. Because it's going to be new for them. They haven't done it.
Wow.
Right? So I learned the importance of that. And one little story, because it was not just getting me in the role. I was there 7.5 years and had a good run. And one thing that he sort of set as an expectation that really helped me, kept me very grounded was, and humble. He said, look, this is your first CEO role. I said, yep. He said, your career, your journey from here onwards. Right? I mean, he said something which was like, look, why you got this role is because of what you did yesterday in the years before this. You maintain that attitude, you have got the skill set, you have got the fire in the belly. Where you will go from here will depend on what you do here.
Yeah.
And what you do here is very simple. He said, I'll spell it out for you. This is over a dinner in 5 minutes. I said, okay. I took out my pen and notes to make a note. He said, no, not required. He said, when you see the building, they'd already set up the building. There was this huge sign of the company on the top. He said, the world will see it as Ventura.
Yeah.
When you come to office every day or when you leave Anupam, I want you to see it as Anupam's Ventura. Remember, there's an Anupam written on top of it.
Wow.
So for the rest of your career from here onwards, what you're going to do here will define your brand, who you are.
The conversations like these, they get marked in your life and they stay with you. I think the conversations like this and people, when you meet these kind of people, I think they really shape your career. Completely. So today when you look for hiring, right, you said it's a very important process and it's a very defining process for any organization. The kind of people who work for your organization is going to define the kind of results that your organization is going to deliver and what the organization becomes. Today, when you are hiring for C-suite roles in your organization, what is it that you look for?
Yeah, I think it's a complicated answer because, of course, certain things are given. Like when you interview 3 or 4 people, usually their skill set, their experience is of a similar level. They have done particular kind of roles. But I think in India, more so than probably the rest of the world, because I've had exposure to other countries, I think we have an overemphasis on experience.
Yeah.
We have an overemphasis on, okay, if I'm going to hire for this kind of a role, if I'm hiring in banking or finance, I want someone with experience in this industry.
Yeah.
I want someone who has done this role earlier.
Yeah.
Now, as I told you in my experience, if that was the logic, I would never have got a country head role because there'll always be a first time.
Yeah.
So I think when you're evaluating people with similar experiences, similar skill sets, all those things being equal, what should tip the scale is, as a leader, you know the values and the culture of the organization. The person who's coming in does not know that. They are bringing certain skills and certain abilities to the table.
Yeah.
One has to assess the strength of that and model it, picturize it. Think of this person coming to office within your own company on day 1, day 50, day 100. And almost do a prediction. Will this person be successful? Am I hiring the right fit? I think that is extremely important because that, otherwise what can happen is you can invest a lot of energy, and this is data that shows that when CEOs or senior CXOs leave within the first couple of years, they set the company back 30%.
Yeah.
So it's extremely important, extremely important. So a few things we learned, and Steven has taught me a lot on this. My boss, Reggie, he is extremely passionate about leadership hiring. He personally invests hours and hours. And it's okay to do that because look at the amount of hours you are saving by putting that investment upfront. Right? Sometimes candidates get upset, and it's okay. Because if they're going to get upset through that process, you better not have them. So to answer your question, it's about ensuring that you're getting the right fit. And in our process of interviewing, for example, we are extremely transparent with the challenges. We don't try to put on rose-colored spectacles. We actually want the person partly to even question that, is this the right thing for them?
Yeah.
Because an interviewing process is an hour, 2 hours, a few hours. Cannot come close to the real experience. So you want to make it as real for the person.
Yeah.
And after that, if they opt in, and your process also explains, and you have seen it from many angles, we have different people, we have peers interviewing, we have people in the team interviewing, get a 360-degree view. Things still go wrong.
Yeah.
But when sometimes, for example, we say no to certain senior people, and sometimes I connect with them elsewhere, or in my own experience, we should always thank an organization who, if after such a process has said no to you, has done you an immense favor. Because that square peg in a round hole is the worst thing you can do to your career.
For yourself as well. Forget about the organization.
Right. Forget the organization.
Yeah.
Exactly. I always say that. It's more about you assessing if this is the great thing for you. Because guess what? The organization has 60 days to get you out.
Precisely.
But for you, it's a lifetime of a career.
Yeah. And the spot that you'll be holding on to.
Correct.
Forget about even if you don't show it on your profile, but you will still be holding on to you.
Of course.
Holding it to you for yourself. Yeah.
Yep.
You also spoke about that there are pieces of imposter syndrome that you have dealt with. You have dealt with some kind of insecurity, some kind of doubts as well. Now, when you deal with individuals who are like technically really that, when you deal with those people, when people are talking about latest technology, breakthroughs happening in the world of technology, when they talk about, when they pull out jargons from their bags, right? AI, blockchain, this technology, that technology. How do you deal with those individuals? And how do you deal with your inner Anupam as well during that time?
Again, very profound question, Gaurav, and you're really making me reflect on things that are happening real time. So let me start with a little story about when I was interviewing for this role and everything had worked out. And I was in the final meeting. I was in Washington, where we are headquartered, and my final meeting was with my boss, current boss, and the CEO, founder, Reggie Agrawal. And he said, "Look, we'd like to make an offer." And once he said that, it was like that real moment. You're starting to envision going and doing this leadership role that you described. So while I was quietly confident, I still said to him, "Reggie, I hope you remember, I'm not a techie. I do not come with a BE or a specialist engineering degree. So are you sure that I would be able to do this?" Now, what I was asking him was basically, you know the organization well, you know the challenges well, the same thing we discussed just now a little while earlier. I don't want to take up something and bomb. So I was seeking validation, confidence, and some sort of chin up from him. His answer, I still remember, was very, very profound. And it again, to your point about meeting certain people and learning from them. He said, "Anupam, 20 years, at that time, I think it was 20 years ago, when I founded Cvent, at that point in time, I was a lawyer.
Wow.
So I was looking to solve for a pain. Technology happened to be the aspirant, the way we solve for it.
Yeah.
So if I could start Cvent, and today it is a multi-billion-dollar organization, as you said, one of the fastest growing SaaS companies, then I think you can definitely run India." So yeah, that is one part. But again, you asked another very important question, which is that how do you deal with the dynamics of the room?
Yeah.
Again, I think part of that answer is going back to managing what's going on inside you. If what's going on inside you is that I have to be the superior voice,
Yeah.
I have to
Or
be
the last voice in the room.
last voice, I have to be the specialist in every field, then there will always be that insecurity. And let me tell you, the team, as I said, is always more smart than the leader. They can read through that. They can, and especially if you're going to spend a number of years, right? People get to know you. So it's very important to be yourself. Now, in my case, I was very clear, what is it that I'm here to solve? For example, we're looking to scale up. We're trying to add more talent. We're trying to look at areas. So being clear about your role in the room. And the second big area that I was trying to focus on was, how do I uncork a combined strength of my team? They're obviously great specialists, but they're specialists in their area.
Yeah.
Probably mine is the only role in the organization that cuts across every function.
Yeah. Stitching it together.
Correct. Technology, client services, marketing,
Finance, operations.
PMO, finance, HR. How do you get that juice growing? Obviously, you are a specialist in certain areas out of them. But that is not important at that time. At that time, you are the facilitator.
Yeah.
You're not the provider of the answer. You are the provider of the environment that creates the magic, that gets that chemistry. You're the catalyst in the chemical equation.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
you're like, without you, that may not happen. It's important to be the problem solver for areas that your team today will tell you, "Hey, I need your help here."
Yeah.
Ask the question. One of my favorite questions is, "So how can I help?"
Yeah.
Right? And the team will tell you. You don't have to second guess it.
Yeah.
You don't have to put that pressure on yourself. You can easily cover that through dialogue, right? And the last thing I'll say is that I think it's important for the culture of the organization to sustain that kind of stuff. It's all great to say this, but on a day-to-day life,
It's very messy.
Correct. How does the organization measure your success?
Yeah.
If the organization is always asking, "Hey, Gaurav, if you are the CEO, what are you doing? I'm going to measure you on these things," then that will drive your behavior. The organization, the leadership, the culture has to be mature to understand the role of what is the expectation from you, right? Because remember, you may get the best musicians in the room and they may not be able to create music together. You need someone
Who can orchestrate it.
Correct.
Absolutely.
Right.
Anupam, how do you manage your emotions when it comes to taking some really difficult decisions in the organization? Probably that's one of the trickiest part of leading a team. And at times it could be really messy because we all come from our own experiences.
I think it's important to be honest to yourself about your emotions. if you're feeling something, don't push it on the carpet. That's the first thing. Take some time off, step back, and observe what you're going through. It's okay. We're humans.
Yeah.
Even if you're a leader, CEO, Prime Minister,
Absolutely, yeah.
President, you're all still bound by the same rules of humans. You still breathe. You still eat. So being humble about, being aware about your emotions is very important. And then you learn over the number of years. And therefore, I have certain fundamentals that guide me in life. And I've learned them into very, very, there are a lot of battle scars, as they say, that have taught you some of those things. So being honest to your emotions, not shying away from the hard conversations. So it happened quite early in my career when I was, in a CXO role. And that was the first time I had to lay off or fire a senior leader. Gaurav, I couldn't sleep for almost a week since I got to know that since we made the decision. I took 2 days of leave to try and get myself to have the conversation. Now imagine these are people you have worked with, you have a shared context, you know their families. All of that is passing through your mind as you are thinking about it. What will happen when I deliver this news to the individual?
Yeah. Are you in touch with those individuals?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I'll tell you that story that when I went through that whole, despite all this preparation in terms of being in touch with your emotions, when the final day came, I said, okay, today I'm going to have this conversation. I chickened out. I couldn't get myself to do it. So, like a smart CXO, CEO, what I did was I called up my HR and said, can you call this person and deliver this news to them at the end of the day after I've left? So I left office. This person had the scheduled meeting with this individual and they conveyed the decision. 2 hours after that, this individual called me late night, around 11 p.m. And I was dreading it. Saw the call, but I think I was honest enough to pick up the phone. And the sum and substance of what the person said is obviously deeply disturbed, this and that. They said, you know what? I can deal with this. What I could not deal with is after all the battles together, all the times together, Anupam, you did not convey this to me. I heard it from a third person. So I learned the value.
It's painful.
Of course. And I met this person outside work. I gave them a hug and I learned my lesson. Being human is more important than being a leader. Chances that you are a great leader without being a great human, they're
Very, very bleak. At times I tell people that, the term leader or the word leadership is overrated. Being human is underrated.
profound.
And at the end of the day, who you are is how you lead. So, how have you been able to stay relevant, and how have you been able to upgrade yourself, if that's the right terminology? I don't know.
Well, Gaurav, I think I would call it as a term learning humility. What do I mean by learning humility? I think one belief I have is that your success in today's times depends on how fast you can learn and unlearn. So it's important to maintain that. So I'd keep that as an attitude, that if something worked for me in the past, it may not work in the current. I have to be open to trying new things. Why the humility? Because the starting point is that I don't have all the answers. So if you start there, you're going to discover, you're going to probe, you're going to ask questions, you're going to be a lot more attentive when people are speaking. The second aspect of it, I think in the modern world as leaders, when I was growing up as a leader, information was power. I still remember people used to have Excel formula that they won't share with you because they could make their worksheets faster because they knew how to have the shortcuts. And anyone who shared it, they would take a big treat from you. Today, I think information is a given. The world we live in, it's in a surplus. You have to identify the right thing, the wheat from the chaff. But as the information becomes more and more available, application or the ability to understand application is becoming less and less available. So I try to keep myself real on that. I'll give you a specific example. There's a lot of conversation on AI, right? You mentioned that earlier. People talking smartly about solutions they've developed, applications they've developed, the way they can. If you step back, it is no different from a lot of the other efficiency tools that we have experienced in the corporate world or outside. Now, when I was being trained in GE, for example, we understood the power of Six Sigma in the context of making a process better.
Yeah.
So you look at any process, it can be improved to the level where it becomes Six Sigma. Now let's bring these two together as an application. Somebody's pitching an AI tool to you, and you're wondering, okay, my current process is delivering at 90%. With this tool, I can go from 90 to 97%.
Yeah.
I will have to put my whole organization through this change. Do I really see the value in it? Second example, the process that I'm currently dealing with is very nuanced. It changes with every interaction. A new customer interaction, a new kind of process, and the machine can learn faster and be more consistent than a human.
Yeah.
Sure, it's a case for AI. Why I gave this example is that as a leader, when you're sitting there, you're about to sign the new application or the new software, are your eyes focused on the glamour of the tool, the power of what it professes, or are you grounded in the application of the process that you will choose to apply it on?
And that's a very big question. I mean, it's very easy to get smitten with the glamour.
Absolutely. This is FOMO. It's not even glamour. It's FOMO.
Yeah.
Oh, I meet other friends and say, oh, what are you doing on AI? Nothing.
Nothing.
They're like, oh, backward.
Ah.
And that too in a technology company. So yes, I think on an honest note, we do look at processes. We have a council that evaluates what are the areas. But I think the critical thing there for me as a leader, because I'm not going to be a subject matter expert, is to focus on the process.
If you remember, during one of our conversation a couple of months back, you spoke about a term called life's worth. And I generally use this term called life's work. So as a leader, what is it? What formula do you use, if there is any, that could assist an individual to find their life's work and their life's worth?
Look, if there was a formula for identifying what is the right work to do in life, I think the world would be a much happier place.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, there isn't a formula.
Yeah.
And there's a process of discovery that one has to go with. My only advice and the learning that I've had is, if what you're doing right now does not appear like it's your life's purpose, because sometimes it's a process of elimination. You may not know your purpose, but you will certainly know if this is not your purpose. Like I knew engineering is not for me. People often don't remember what you did for them. If I go back and say to any colleague of mine that 4 years back, what's the bonus or what's the increment that I gave you? I don't think they'll remember. Or when I hired someone, what's the salary that I gave you? They will not remember. One thing they will remember, Gaurav, is how you made them feel.
Yeah.
So I put an inordinate amount of emphasis in my conduct on making sure that every interaction that I have with people, when I end that interaction, I do ask myself, we live in the world of CSAT.
Yeah.
So there's a CSAT question that pops up in my head. Anupam, how would you score your interaction with Gaurav?
Yeah.
Did you leave him feeling a little better than when he came to you?
Yeah.
And if the answer is yes, then the CSAT is great. If not, opportunity to learn.
You spoke about purpose, Anupam. In all these years of leading organizations, leading teams, how has your purpose evolved?
Yeah, thanks for asking that question, because I do think about that today. I mean, when you've done 30 years, you are thinking of that evolution, that journey. I think it's moved to the point of a little bit like the Maslow hierarchy where, you feel very fortunate.
Yeah.
When I look back, and I do believe that you should say your thank yous and sorries in time, because we don't know how long we have on the face of earth. So let me use this great opportunity to thank everyone, my leaders, my teachers, my peers, my team members, who over these years have made me who I am, contributed in their unique ways. So thank you for that. And I think the purpose today becomes, how do I pay that forward? How do I, with my corporate commitments, find personal time, and it is a little bit of a sacrifice, to allow for that one conversation. It sometimes takes just that one question, as you mentioned earlier, about having those conversations with those people. And I don't know if I'm worthy of it or not, but if I am, I'm happy to offer that. And let me use this podcast and this forum to say that to people out there. I can't promise that I can be all throughout the journey, but one step for sure, if I can in any meaningful way, pay forward, add to you, have that one conversation, then feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn or on my email ID. and I'll definitely want to pay forward and give
Yeah.
back, because
Yeah.
it's been a wonderfully fulfilling journey personally. On a larger note, I think the purpose has evolved, Gaurav, to understanding how do we give back to society. I think this world that we are living in, there is a connectedness which probably mankind hasn't experienced. There are a lot of negatives going on in the world right now.
Yeah, the world is going through some really difficult times.
We all
Be
know
it
that.
the wars going on, be it the climatic conditions that we have, the cyber insecurity that we are experiencing on day-to-day basis.
Medical
Yeah.
situations, extreme weather-led
Yeah.
diseases. So coming back to the consciousness of that, I think in our unique way as organizations, can we get associated with some responsibility of paying back? Some, because we operate in a particular environment. At Cvent, communities is one of our values.
Yeah.
So we want to create a positive impact. Now, can you change and solve for all the traffic mess in Gurgaon? The answer is no.
No.
But look, there are enough and more causes there: sustainability, green initiatives, working with underprivileged children for education, because they will be the future of the workforce, working with empowering, getting more women in the workforce. So, in our own small way, as Cvent, as a leader, I try to get ourselves to be involved in some of these.
Yeah.
And it is a sacrifice, because you end up doing it in your personal time.
Precisely.
But believe me, that eventual level of fulfillment,
Yeah.
which the material, the bonuses, the equity, it has a diminishing marginal utility, as I
Yeah.
call it.
Yeah.
Beyond a time, your consumption at the physical materialistic plane is going to run out. And then you will look for internal satisfaction, happiness. And my quote that I learned in my experience that guides me there is that real happiness lies in making others happy. And that can manifest through really small interactions. It doesn't have to be something massive. If you
Yeah.
can smile at someone that you don't know, assuming they're looking up from their phone,
Yeah.
but that is another malice in today's times. It's difficult to make eye contact
Yeah.
with people. But if you can, and you're able to smile at someone without a reason, I think that is magic of creating happiness.
Precisely. They say, Anupam, I have solved yesterday's problem and I have been blessed with another problem. I'm very sure about what I was dealing with 3 days back, and now I'm still unsure about something which is coming my way. What are you unsure about today as a father, as a corporate leader, that you're still trying to figure out?
I think, to be honest and to be vulnerable, there is always a validation that we're seeking within us. What I look at is that, am I delivering 100% to my potential? Could I do more? How else can I contribute to my daughter's journey? Am I missing out on that one crucial conversation that I should be having with her? That one phone call that I should be making to her, or that one trip that we should be doing together? Can I contribute to my organization maybe by doing this additional thing? So I think it is a constructive pressure, as I call it.
Does it bring in some kind of guilt?
Not really.
Not really.
I think it brings in an assessment and motivation.
The creative tension, what we call it.
The creative tension. I mean, okay, look, at times, if at the end of that process of internalization, you find that you have been mischievous and you have been ignoring, then it could bring in a guilt. Because time lost does not come back.
Yeah.
So a childhood that is gone will not come back.
Yeah.
And a lot of us do deal with that guilt by God's grace. I not in my mind, not in that category. So blessed to be there. But the answer to that again lies in your power of making the present count. Even if you're with guilt, what does that motivate you
Yeah.
to change today? So if you want that satisfaction, you want that good 8 hours sleep, nobody ever said it's going to be easy.
Yeah.
But it's certainly be fulfilling. So in the corporate world, I often joke with my leaders and saying, the reward for good work is more work.
Yeah.
But then it is also fulfilling.
It is.
So
It
it's a
is.
choice, Gaurav.
Anupam, I saw you when you left Encore. I remember our couple of conversations that we met for our parathas and conversations. After that, I saw Anupam 1.0. When next are you taking a sabbatical?
Well, I don't know if it was 1.0 or 10.0.
10.0, yeah.
Because, we met at a particular point in
Yeah.
in life. And even at that point in time, Gaurav, believe me, I did not know that it's going to work like that.
Yeah.
And as I said, beyond a particular point in time, when you have spent X number of years, I don't want to disclose my age, but when you have spent X number of years walking the face of earth, there are only few things that delight you, that awaken the child in you.
Yeah.
And one of them is the glorious uncertainty of what tomorrow will bring.
The glorious uncertainty. What a beautiful word it is, isn't it? Glorious uncertainty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is, because it's often said if you knew your future, maybe you wouldn't be so excited, or
Yeah.
maybe you wouldn't enjoy the present. So that's why, K Sera, the future will be, it's not for us to see. So I really believe in focusing on the present moment. And I honestly leave and wake up with that little sense of magic around, let's see what the glorious uncertainty of today brings.
Yeah.
And we embrace that with as much joy, with as much happiness and purpose as yesterday.
Thank you so much. What a pleasure interacting with you, Anupam. I could not have asked for more. Thank
Thank
you
you,
for
Gaurav.
sharing so many important chapters, so many important instances of your life.
Well,
Always a pleasure
Thank
interacting
you.
with you.
Thank you, Gaurav, and thank you, Ex-Monks. I think you have been very kind in providing me multiple opportunities. And I do want to say this to anyone who would hear this. Uh, while it may appear that there's a lot to share and there's a lot that you're putting out there for others to consume, I want to be honest to confess that when you talk about this, it's like a whirlwind of your life running on fast forward in front of you.
Yeah.
And when I get up from here, I am feeling a lot more in gratitude for this opportunity, because it's like a refresher, it's like a crash course,
Yeah.
leaves you energized and more purposeful. So thank you once again to you and to everyone. Thank you.
Shukran. Thank you.
Thank you, Gaurav.
What a conversation it was, wasn't it? I'm a new parent. I've got a daughter who's like only 4.5, 5. Listening to Anupam was a masterclass for me. What does it mean to trust your children? What does it mean to hold the space for your children so that they continue to walk on the path that is defined for them, that they really deserve and desire for themselves? How can you bring the whole team together so that on one hand you stay committed to your purpose, at the same time, together as a team, as an organization, you continue to serve the people that you chose for yourself. You continue to serve the community that you take a stand for. And the third thing that I learned from the conversation was why it's not good to have. You can't afford not to stay abreast to what's happening in the world so that you can continue to stay relevant in the world that you are a part of. I thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. Would love to hear what were your key takeaways. If you loved the conversation, do share this with somebody you believe would get benefited. By the way, in case you would like to interact with me, in case you would like to ask me anything, do follow me on LinkedIn and do subscribe to my YouTube channel and on Spotify as well as Apple Podcast. I look forward to interacting with you and look forward to bring to you another interesting conversation next week. Take care of yourself and stay tuned.